was just going to prison, because after the RICO trials, the commission trial in '85, that's what I really think. Like, RICO's what really killed the mob. And then when Gotti, was out there, he's that type of guy who's just not going to hide or whatever. And but just some of the decisions I just don't understand. Like, that the FBI is across the street, and they actually got names of other mobsters that they didn't even know who were connected from him. They all had to come and pay their tribute every Tuesday night, knowing that the feds are across the street. Where, like, around here, like a guy like Russell Buffalino, or even like your father's type, they would never do that. Like, they're in the shadow.
No, Russell Buffalino was a true Don. My father was very low man on the totem pole by design. However,
And listen, I'll cut this out if you want me to, but I do want to ask this. When your mother was, though, raped, and then they found them with ice picks and all that, do you, in your heart of hearts, do you think your father had anything to do with that or no?
Okay, so it was an attempted rape. She wasn't raped, which doesn't make a difference.
I apologize. Attempted, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Just wanted to make it clear. So I've been asked by other people, Eric, about, do you think your father ever killed anybody? And I said, I don't know. I says, I have no idea. I'm sure he's done things he wasn't proud of. I'm sure he strong-armed people. I said, I don't know. And with my mother's attempted rape, I don't think he did it. He did a lot of work with what he used to call the Mustache Petes. The Mustache Petes were the old racketeers, the Sicilians. I have a feeling he went to them because he did a lot of numbers with them. And I think the ice picks were used because it was done by a Sicilian. That was their weapon of choice. And I think he had something to do with it, absolutely, but I don't think he physically did it. I don't know if he ever, people have asked me, I don't know if he's ever killed anyone.
Well, he's not going to tell you that, I'm sure.
And I honestly, I would venture to say no. He never had guns in the household. He didn't have a gun in his car. My uncles did say he had guns years and years ago. But I think my father, he got along really well with Maddie and the Genovese crew because my father he always wanted money in his pocket and a lot of money. And I think he was about earning. I don't think he was about killing, because contract killers in the mafia are outside the family. But if you're in the family and you work for them as a killer, yes, some people make a lot of money, but most don't.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. No, the racketeers is where the money's really at, though. As for, I always say gangster, racketeer, and the racketeers are who you really don't need, though, to keep the business afloat. I mean, it's all about money. You do, though, need, though, the soldiers as well, though. That's how that works. Like you were saying, though, the army analogy before. And another question, though, that I had, though, you were just from talking with you too, and this isn't in the book or anything, though, but you seem, though, to be very well educated, and I'm pretty well educated on the history of the mob and stuff. A gentleman, because you're from New Jersey, and it's not a fascination, but I didn't hear a lot about him. But then you mentioned something about him. No, what do you know about Robert Cabert?
Oh, Bobby. So Bobby was from Belleville.
Okay.
And Bobby was, according to my father and other guys, he was a true psychopath, like Jimmy Randazzo was. And Jimmy Higgins. But Bobby Cabert was nuts. He would just pull out again because the waiter looked at him the wrong way. He would do what you see on TV, with cement and dump you overboard
Yeah.
and torture. And he was crazy. And he went out with, so my cousin's girlfriend, Debbie, he went out with her. So Debbie today is married to a gentleman who did all of the windows for the Statue of Liberty. Legal guy, 24 years older. But her mother owned a hot dog truck. Debbie was very beautiful, but she needed to keep her mouth shut. No education, none of that. No grace, nothing. So she went out with Bobby. And we're at the Turtle Brook one night, my girlfriends and I, and Jimmy ran, and Bobby is there with Debbie. And all of a sudden, he pulls out a gun on the other side of the Turtle Brook. A friend of mine came over to me who was in the rackets and said, "You and your girlfriends go. The nut job is out." We left. He used to beat up Debbie. He would accuse her of things. And she broke up with him, and there was even danger in that, and my father wouldn't do business with Kerbert, the Campeses, or almost worse than Kerbert, and Jimmy Higgins. He had to once in a blue moon. These were true psychopathic people. True, almost like a Joey Gallo. And Bobby Kerbert, he ended up with John Gotti being a capo for him, but that's because John Gotti, he started out robbing milk trucks and stuff. He was a thug. And John Gotti was so unintelligent, he didn't even recognize it in anyone. All he saw in Bobby was someone that's going to listen to me and kill for me and make money. But he didn't realize what he was dealing with. So you'll find people around here that'll say, "Oh, Bobby was a good guy." I don't know why they're saying that unless they're scared. But people, his own crew, when he died, they had a party. They were so happy.
Yeah, well, I just had a gentleman on, though, who owed money to him for over a decade, and he used to fix races everywhere, and he was just Larry Rolla is his name, and he just said the guy was just insane. He was a type of guy that just walk right up to you, put one right in between your eyes, no hesitation, boom. And he said, "John,
he pulled his gun out on Bloomfield Avenue with all the little women, old Italian women, and all their black going into the bakery. He just pulled it out, and he pulled out his gun one day to shoot somebody because he couldn't get out of the spot. Everybody always used to park 2 and 3, across, and you're running into the fish market, this market, that market. And he just pulled his gun out. He could care less. He had and if you look at his face as he aged, he looks nuts. And there's not much written about him, like you said.
Yeah, and also, so you're saying, though, pulling his gun out, not even just on mobsters, though, like even on innocent people.
Yes, he wasn't about business. He had no allegiance to anyone.
Yeah, so like I said, though, I was putting up clips about that Kerbert guy and stuff, and that guy, just been hearing a lot about him lately. So obviously, you had a little experience, though, with him too, and that he was just out of his mind crazy.
Yes.
So certain people in the mob, Angela, like I'm sure you heard the name Roy DeMeo and people like that, they're just almost serial killer types in a way. Like they just
Roy DeMeo's crew, and then 2 people went off, and they called them the Gemini crew. They were originally with the DeMeo. Yeah, those are kind of serial killer type people, and they did not fit the norm, for the mob guy. Right? They did not fit the norm. They were truly serial killers. The Campisi brothers from Newark, also outlaws, and those are exceptions to the rule. Yeah. They're out there.
It seems like your childhood, though, okay, yeah, your dad, was in the mob, had some mob ties, but it seems though like the advice he gave you and like you were loved, like he wasn't abusive or anything like that. Like he seems like father-wise, was he a great father?
Yeah, so my dad no, he never laid a finger on me. My mother, being the Italian mother, would pull my hair once in a while or hit me while I was going by. But my father never put a pinky on me. He didn't believe in authoritarian parenting. Neither did my mother. I had free speech. I was allowed to say my opinions. I was allowed to talk back. I was kind of raised in a liberal household, but I did that with my own children. So while I was raised in a liberal household, my father had a great work ethic. So did my mom, and they appreciated every single thing they had. And children live what they live what they learn. So, and what they see. So I was raised with two parents who had good standards, high work ethic, appreciated everything they got, took care of things. And he was a good parent. He talked to me. He had a lot of patience. He was not demonstrative. He wasn't one to say, "Oh, I love you," or any of that. But he coached softball, girls softball one year. He took me on daisy walks, taught me all about the animals. The kids in the neighborhood loved him so much they would come ring the doorbell and see if Larry could come out to play. So he'd spend time with the kids. Yeah, I had two really good parents. People tell me I'm more like my dad than my mom, but because I think she what's the word? Housed all the angst and the stress and everything of her decision. She chose this lifestyle, right? But there was stress with this. So I think I handle stress a lot like they do inwardly, but they were both very good parents. And again, I wasn't raised around people who were like crazy people.
Like the converts, yeah.
I wasn't raised around that, and my parents, they had barbecues with the neighbors, and there were neighbors that didn't like us and neighbors that were bad, and they knew what they were bad to us or whatever. But my father used to say, you don't go to war for neighbors. You don't go to war for love. You don't go to war for civilians. You don't do any of that. Just leave it alone.
Yeah, I read something in the book. I forget what town though you were in at the time though, where like I think one of the neighbors were saying like "mob daughter" or something like
Rutherford,
that.
Yeah. And my father, nothing was ever done about it, and so they were good parents, and my house always had a bunch of teenagers in it and kids, and nobody questioned anything. And I don't know if any parents really thought anything, but nothing was ever said to me. But then years later, a few people at a reunion, they said to me, "Oh, there was talk, I'd heard my parents, reading in the newspaper, but like kids are they're very accepting. Like, what did they care? My mother was making calzones and cooking, and we had the pool going, and our house was like a party house. So kids don't care about that stuff, and they were very welcoming to family and friends, and they were fun people. I think the one thing I could say about my parents were they were non-judgmental. They were friendly with whether you were someone they met through their neighbor who worked for Paramount or the garbage man down the block. And that was the beauty of Rutherford. We had a mix in our neighborhoods, very wealthy to people who were garbage men, people who were house cleaners, and we had opera singers. And, I don't know if you find that today, but you did then.
No, he would treat everyone though with respect though, not just
absolutely.
That's how, and that's a lesson even like my father tells me though. He's like, treat everyone we're all the same, we all bleed red, just because someone's up here or whatever doesn't mean that you should look down on someone who's down here.
Right. And my parents did though say, again, it's how you want to go, Angela. You treat everyone with respect. Doesn't mean that they are your friends you bring into your home. Everyone is treated with respect, but choose who you want to spend your time with, So there was a lot of good life lessons growing up from both parents. And then as as I got older, I met Joe and we married and had kids. And I think my father really enjoyed being a grandpa because he wasn't around. So I think, when I was little, so he came to the doctors with me, the pediatrician with the kids, and he walked them. He used to walk me too and all that kind of stuff, but he was working. So I think he really enjoyed that, with the kids on the acre and teaching them how to plant, and built them a bocce ball court. And at my book signing at the High Lawn in West Orange, people asked my kids who were there, so did you know what your grandpa did? And they were like, nope, it's just our papa. Like we knew what he does now, but growing up, he was just our papa, so.
Yeah, and he lived though, what was it, 99?
Yeah, he probably would have lived a little bit longer, but he chose to die. Yeah,
that's something though too. Though I mean, I bet you he was more like. I mean, I'm sure you have to have a little fear aspect in that life, but I bet you he was like, he was loved. I bet I bet he was really like. I mean, to live that long, especially if you're a mob affiliate or whatever, to make it to 99, and he wasn't in prison or nothing, right? Like he died out.
No, he only went to prison one time during the counterfeiting during the war. Yeah. Nope, he never went to prison another time, and he was kind of funny. He was at Monmouth Raceway one day. He was like 83, and he was so young looking. And some guy went up to him and said, Larry, oh, I haven't seen you. A brother racket guy. My father said, you got the wrong guy. I don't know who you look just like him. You're a spitting image. And I said to my father, how could you do that to him? And he's like, because I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. He's like, I just said, I don't want to talk to anybody anymore. He says, I'm down here in Tom's River. I'm living on my acre, doing my thing. No, he just disassociated.
What did he think of the New Age mob? Like guys like John.
That's why in 76 he started getting out. He didn't like from 76 the guys coming up.
Like was it the like flash, like too much flash, too much.
He actually thought that what was why and how it was started, why it was started, the guys' characters, the rules of management changed. He didn't like Joe Colombo because he said Joe Colombo never should have got shot. Now, Joe Colombo's of his era. He said, we don't exist. He went on TV. He wanted to do rallies for a town. You don't do that when you're a rally guy.
Public. He was seeking interviews and stuff. Yeah.
You don't do that. And my father, he came from an era when you didn't exist. He came from an era of Charlie the Blade Tureen, Richie the Boot, Richie Biardo, Jerry Katina. They were Matty Ianello, Lefty Ruggiero. These were all guys that Mike Sabella. These were all guys that they were mafia, but they were, how could I explain it? More businessmen. And they enjoyed their families, and they weren't all about the killing. And then you had John Gotti, and you had the Gallo brothers. But John Gotti, he, like I said, was just a thug.
I hear 50-50 on Gotti, like, because like when you hear him on like the wiretaps, he doesn't sound very intelligent. But didn't know, like when I talked to other people that were around him, they said that he was real sharp and like very street astute. Because I always wondered, like, how did he get everyone to come on board to be like, yeah, we want him to be the boss?
Because he picked the most unintelligent people. And how intelligent was he when his Ravenite was bugged every single day in Little Italy?
Well, my argument is, what are you doing having people showing up when you know the feds are outside every Tuesday night?
Because he didn't care. He thought he was legal in his Brioni suits, right? I
think he just knew he was. I think because he even said a wiretaps. I think he knew he was just going to prison because after the RICO trials, the commission trial in '85, that's what I really think. Like RICO's what really killed the mob, and then when Gotti, was out there, he's that type of guy who's just not going to hide or whatever, and. But just some of the decisions I just don't understand. Like, that the FBI is across the street, and they actually got names of other mobsters that they didn't even know who were connected from him. They all had to come and pay their tribute every Tuesday night, knowing that the feds are across the street. Where like around here, like a guy like Russell Buffalino, or even like your father's type, They would never do that. Like they're in the shadow.
No, and Russell Buffalino was a true Don. My father was very low man on the totem pole by design. However, he had
mentality. I'm talking though, like the same lower key,
same kind of psychology, and the garment district was involved. But I think John Gotti was a thug, and I think his mentality was to kill and take what's mine, and that's where that tribalism comes from. But he didn't have the military side of it. And Sammy Gravano was not much better. So I do think his decisions were poor. And I do think his wife, and if you listen to his children, it's amazing. It's almost like by the grace of God, the money that they have, but the blood on their hands wasn't always business. It was something more than that. And for him to kill his neighbor, because he ran over his son next, and he didn't realize it, and he just had no morals. He just, I don't think he was.
That was more the wife, That was more, John actually was saying, though, it was an accident, but the wife, though, wouldn't stop. His wife, but just kept going, oh, if you're supposed to be this, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when they went on that trip to Florida, and then he went missing.
Yeah, Victoria. Yeah, the whole all of the Gotti family is just quite amazing. Paul Castellano, he lived right there, and I think when John Gotti did all that, Paul Castellano, he had no respect for it because he got it through brother-in-laws, right? He got it through being a family. So John Gotti didn't respect that, and also Paul Castellano, he was another one. He thought he was a businessman. So, he just came in and took the spoils, but I don't think he had much respect. And of course, the public, the buying public, they liked him because he acted like a movie star and he had his fancy lawyer, and all of that. But they didn't see the behind the scenes, and the public is, in my opinion, I don't want to say unintelligent because they're not. They're not savvy in everything they purchase, including me. If I didn't know about the mob and I didn't live in the household I lived in, I could certainly understand the fascination with John Gotti, but I got another side to him. And to tell you the truth, how successful was he? The people that did not go to jail, the people that were low key, people will say, I'll say Mike Sabella. Some people will say they never heard of him. He owned Casa Bella in the city. And in 1976, he had $1 million out on the street. $1 million out on the street in 76. It's 2025. Yeah. But you never heard of the man. They also didn't live the way Gotti lived in Howard Beach. They lived in beautiful homes in suburbs. They participated in their communities. But they didn't do what Gotti did in Howard Beach for
But is it though the beautiful homes though not too smart?
So they all didn't have, when I say beautiful homes, I don't mean like huge mansions. They did have, some of them did have larger homes than usual, but most of the homes were modest and for what they were able to afford, Yeah. And again, it goes with the time of the rackets. But my father didn't like who was coming up because he also felt there was too many changes within the families. He thought that Mike Sabella being demoted was a bad idea. He saw that Matty Ianello, as much as he liked him, he saw that he was getting a little too much, he didn't want to let things go. He got a little too, I don't want to say greedy, because he always treated my father well, but he saw that other younger guys were coming up under him and he was taking more. And my father, I think, so to speak, didn't want to fight for position or the old days. So he saw a way of, let me start pulling out semi-retirement in 76. And he did. And by 83, he was totally out.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He got out though at a good time. That's when everything just, hit the fan, especially in 85. And then, what happened after that with the commission trial. And then John then took over. And then he had the Chindo that was still out there after him. And who was the last main boss? Joe Massino.
Domicino, yes.
That's
Yes.
what I'm thinking
And
of.
yeah, and I think that I think today when I look online too at all the mob guys doing podcasts and this and
Oh,
that, I'm like, this is a whole nother era, right?
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
Unbelievable.
just but he didn't like what he saw happening internally, and it was time to go. Like he even said to my mother, how long am I gonna do this? How long am
Yeah.
I gonna do this? I've been doing it for so long, and the people are changing, and he didn't like what was going on with Lefty, and with when Brasco infiltrated.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember my father saying, they would go to La Maguinette, which was a restaurant which was not mob or anything. We used to go too. It was a beautiful restaurant. And he said he's not a jewel thief. This guy's not a jewel thief, and he's not a racket guy. And he had this good intuition, and I don't think he wanted to get caught up in anything again because he knew Rico, and he used to say that Giuliani has the city all tied up, and
Yeah.
Rico, and he didn't want to go through any of that again.
And then Joe Bonanno's book basically gave the blueprint of the whole entire that's what helped Giuliani. When he read
Yes.
The Man of Honor is the name of the book, and it had the whole structure of how it works and all that. And
Yep,
it's
man
like,
of honor. Yeah. So he just didn't want to go through all that again. It was time to go. And they sold in Rutherford. They built a home in Tom's River. And he enjoyed, And then he died, like you said, 99. He chose to die. He was not in a nursing home or anything. He just said, how far am I going to go? He said, my heart's given out. I'm going to land in a nursing home. I'm not going that route. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? And he said, I'm going to die. I said, okay. So I told the doctors, and the psychiatrist said he was of sound mind, and we got hospice. And I said, tell me the procedure. And my mother was half understanding, half not, and that was it. He had his ice chips, and the manager came in one day and said to me, he asked if he wanted last rites and this and that, and he took care of everything. He thanked everyone, said, I'll be in a coma next week. I won't be able to thank you, but I want to thank everyone today. And, and he passed, I guess, about 2 weeks later, 10 days later. And he died. He died the way he wanted to.
on his own terms.
Yes. And he was at peace when he died with, I believe, his life, and how he chose to live it. And we didn't know until after he died, every month he donated to the Smile Train. He never told anybody. The kids that have the cleft palates.
Yeah, yeah.
And all of that. Yeah, we never knew he donated to that, like every month. And he was a quiet man. And again, I only know a slice of my father's life. I don't know most of it. So when I was with him, I appreciated it more. And then my mother went on to live 5 years without him. And she was okay. And she passed at 95. But I think she missed him, of course. And then she spoke of him less and less. But he was always there. They were together for a long, long time. And my one girlfriend said to me, they were like Bonnie and Clyde. They did whatever they want when they wanted, it sounds like. I said, I think so, right from the start.
Yeah. And to the end, he chose that to that he just couldn't hang around anymore. And he chose that in his terms in 99. I mean, that's incredible.
He was 6 months away, I think, from 100. He was in good shape, and his heart was giving out though. And he said he was getting some dementia, and and he said it was time to go. He said it was time to go. But he was a good dad. My mom was a good mom. And again, I think they taught me, you don't judge people. A, B, you make your own decisions, live by them. C, enjoy the extraordinary as much, or enjoy the ordinary as much as the extraordinary. So I think there was some good life lessons there. But again, I look at why women glamorize mob attire, or why women still glamorize going out with a racket guy. Are you kidding me? For what?
No, they probably didn't grow up though like you. They're trying to chase that, when you're inside.
I can understand that. But my father used to say, when I was older, we have to live in plain sight under the radar. He knew everybody's license plate in the whole neighborhood. He knew everybody's license plate in the family. And he used to say, I can't blame the FBI for doing their job, but I better do mine.
Yeah.
End of story. Because he wanted to know who was in the neighborhood, strange car. So without telling me directly, as I aged, I understood. He was always alert, triple alert. He was you're always living with somebody's watching, so to speak.
Yeah. And then the way
and he did what he could. He didn't own property, didn't own cars. Everything was cash. He bought cars cash. He bought diamond. Everything was cash. But with that being said, I mean, even that trial when I was younger, the grand jury they laughed and the judge didn't know what to do. But the prosecutor said, well, you're telling me, this was before, if people don't know, you go to the grand jury, then they decide if they're going to indict you, if there's enough evidence. So they did decide there was enough evidence, and he did go to trial with everybody else. But the prosecutor said to him, so you're telling me you're a kept man, you don't work. And my father said, or you have no means of work. And my father said, I'm a kept man. My wife works. I don't work. And the gentleman said, so you don't work at all? He said, no, I don't work. So he did what he could within his control. But you know how that goes. The government still surveils. Then he said, not only that, you got to worry about the informants, which there were.
That's scary. Yeah.
It's a life filled with pressure.
Yeah, constantly. Like, you know what I mean? Looking over your shoulder, the informant, just with the project I'm working on, I mean, so many informants. It's just unbelievable. Like, when you look at paperwork, so many informants. And
I also learned from my parents, people who having a lot of money doesn't mean you necessarily live well. You could live well on less money. Living well does not necessarily mean or equate. So we were comfortable, we lived well, but my father didn't want to take that next step, and have even more pressure, like we talked about, if you're a capo and, then you really have pressure and you're really looking over your shoulder. He already had a lot of that. So I don't quite understand it, but, why people glamorize this still and why women want to be with these men. But I will say this, like when the life stopped, it was a transition for me. And like I said, I did miss some of it, but then, like anything else, you realize, okay, I have my new family and this and that. We're not going to be part of this. And it's all good, because let's face it, sometimes when you get stuck in something and you live in a bubble constantly, there's no room for you to evolve. There's no room for you to have different perspectives. There's no room for you to grow. So I think my father did a good thing by walking away completely. Like he broke all ties.
Yeah. And I think when you said it was around 76. Like if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but I mean, that would be a good time though to get away though from that, after everything. I mean, when he got out, is a good time though to get out, because then that's when everything went to shit. Like, with the commission.
He started in 76. He was done by 83. Lefty, I think, was picked up, that whole why Joe Pistone thing broke open.
So he didn't feel good about Joe. Like he had like an intuition about Joe Pistone.
Yes, he came. He told my mother and he said, this guy's got a mustache. I don't like him. He's too observant. He's always with Lefty these days.
I wonder why. Why would he though have a mustache? I'm just curious though.
He finally shaved it. But the joke in the mafia, amongst the mafia kids, where no fathers could have mustaches because, like the Yankees, because they're not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other one that I really know of is Scarpa. He had a mustache, Greg Scarpa Sr.
Yes.
He's the only other one, though,
He's,
that I
right.
really.
When you try and think about it, nobody does. And my father had an intuition about this guy, and just he didn't like the way the whole thing was going, And Lefty really liked him, but Lefty was not the one that first brought him in.
No, it was Tony Mira.
Yes, he brought in Joe Stone as the jewel thief and all of that, and then Lefty got close with him because he worked Lefty, and then my father he knew things weren't adding up.
Yeah, it was definitely it was Tony Mira who brought him in. He was a nut, and then I guess he was around Lefty and those guys, but then I mean, you want to talk about being like gangster to the bone. Sonny Black, when they called him in. He took off his jewelry and they knew they shot him, and then he looked at him and he said, "Make it count this time," and killed him, and they cut his hands off.
Yeah. My father used to go out to the Motion Lounge, because that was his little headquarters out there. I think it was Brooklyn, but I remember my father saying, well, that's what happened. Sabella got demoted. Carmine Galante got killed.
Yeah.
Sabella got demoted. Mike, who I loved. Sonny Black went to Capo. And the reason why was they said that Sonny was more strict, so to speak, than Mike, more observant, more everything. And the irony was, as my father said, how much more observant when you let an FBI guy in your crew?
I know.
And my father used to say all the time, Mike never would have let that happen. Sometimes you overplay your hand, whether you're legal or illegal, and that's just the way it goes. But yeah, so he was out in 83, lived to 2014, passed, and had cut all ties. And because I was not around that, my parents were always invited to the Vegas junkets with the kids, just like you saw in Goodfellas. Everybody going together away with the kids. Hollywood, Florida, Hallandale, and my father always said no. No part of it. The only thing we did was Long Branch in August in the 60s with the Genovese crew, and then just family members, civilians.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Angela, this was fantastic. What do we got? Nice, solid 2-hour interview.
You're gonna have to edit this.
Oh no, yeah. Well, I have the 2 parts though that I'll edit though. But I want to let everyone know to get welcome to the family. My life as a mob daughter. I'll also put it up on the screen. The link is in the description.
I appreciate it.
You can get this on Amazon, and it's a great, quick read, though. And I love, though, the way how, like I said before, it's not ghost written. It's not robotic. It's almost like street language in a way. Like it's. I'm
just talking. I'm not an author, so I'm just talking. Just telling the stories the way it is. But no, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
and thanks for taking the interest.
You had absolutely, and you even had stuff in here about the Westies and with the Javits Center, which is all right. Like that's my bread and butter, the Irish mob. Like I know all about that.
Yeah, and Eli Ricardo, the Westies.
They were no kidnapping wise guys, and as mentioned,
the last Irish mob, really, the last of it, and the racket guys had their hands all over New York. You know that.
Yeah, and then how crazy is this? Is that the Westies actually teamed up with the Mayo crew? So you have those 2 crews together. Yeah. That's just, that's insane.
It got insane. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely insane though. And chopping up bodies and all that type of stuff.
Oh, that all happened, I'm sure. And my father did always carry a baseball bat in the trunk. I mean, all Italian guys got baseball bats. Yeah. I'm sure he used it.
Absolutely. But no, this was truly fantastic. I can't thank you enough. Again, the book is called Welcome to the Family, My Life as a Mob Daughter by Angela Pisano. And definitely worth the read. And Angela, thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible. I can't
thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, Eric. And, I hope that in the future, I don't know if there's anything we can do together or anything like that I think it would be a great idea, because I think you have the pulse of it.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
and
you do have the pulse of what's going on, the truth of what's going on. So,
yeah, that's all I like to try to do. And sometimes, people get mad sometimes because, like, I'll talk about some gray areas that are the truth, but a lot of these guys, though, who are still alive, like, they want their narrative said. But, like, what I do is, like, I try to find, like, the real history,
of
like,
course.
and they don't like that. They want their narrative to be told.
Now, you have to find the truth somewhere in there. But thanks so much.
Thank you, Angela. And this was fantastic. And folks, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next time on The Loomis Show.